My guest tonight is Adur Gopalakrishnan. Adur Gopalakrishnan has emerged as the foremost Indian filmmaker in the post-Satyajit Ray generation. His film Ila Patayam was honored by the British Film Institute, the first Indian film to have been so honored since Satyajit Ray's Apur Sansar. His films are part of the UNESCO 100 Years of Cinema collection. His very first film, Swayamvaram, won the Best Picture Award, the Best Director Award, the Best Cinematography Award, and the Best Actress Award. Adur comes from the village of Adur, and like many of his colleagues, he's drawn his inspiration from Kathakali. Adur, you're on record as saying that Kathakali in some ways embodies in an embryonic form your vision of cinema.
Well, it's very difficult to analyze the influence in that way, but Kathakali has been part of my upbringing, because my family has been for generations associated with the Kathakali as basically as patrons, and I grew up watching Kathakali right from my mother's lap. But when I started learning about cinema formally at the Film Institute, when I became aware of the grammar of cinema, then I suddenly realized that Kathakali, the performance of Kathakali is also very akin to the exposition in cinema. For instance, close-up, because Kathakali characters, actors perform before an oil lamp of 4.5 feet height, and the oil lamp, the amber light, it is supposed to light up their faces, and when they do a mudra, they bring their hands forward, and then it is shown in such a way that it almost looks like a close-up of the hands, and the whole makeup is done in such a way that only the expression is projected, not exactly the figure as such. So it gets to the core of an expression, Kathakali, and that's what exactly cinema also does. I think when you watch a film of real merit, the impression that you get, that's a kind of an experience. You may forget about the environment. The impact that is left on you is the most important thing. And then also the use of colors, for instance, they are absolutely psychological. In Kathakali, it may be very difficult to draw a parallel because Kathakali is very stylized, whereas cinema is basically by its very nature tending towards realism. Of course, it overcomes that, and then the methods used in cinema, especially in the new kind of films that we are all making, we try to overcome this commonplace character of what you do through camera.
What is the quality for you as a viewer, say, when you go in and watch a film that gives it real merit?
Merit because essentially it has to say something very original, and it has to say in a way which is original, because it is not necessarily presenting something what the audience is expecting, because that is what popular cinema does. Audience already knows what they are going to see, and they feel terribly irritated when it is not in consonance with what they have come to see. And in the kind of cinema I am talking about, the exercise is basically like a creation of an artist, where necessarily novelty is the base of it, the basic thing to it. And I do not mean that you have to antagonize an audience or forget about an audience. You need an audience as well. At the same time, audience should feel happy that they are discovering things on their own. There should be challenges. For the filmmaker, there should be a challenge that he is trying to give something new. Even for himself, it should be challenging. Then it becomes a pleasure for the audience that they can discover new things in the work.
To what extent do you consciously seek to cultivate originality or to do something differently for its own sake?
No, nothing is being done for its own sake. In fact, it is boring that when you start creating something, if you become suddenly aware that you already done it or somebody else has already done it, then it must be a repetition of what is already there. So it is quite boring to do that. So it is for one's own pleasure that you try to say things in newer ways, and you try to even innovate in terms of the technique that you use. So this is a part of this is an ongoing kind of process. It doesn't stop with just one film, and it's not a question of a film being accepted and approbated and then you say, well, I have reached. For an artist, there is nothing like a point where you can reach and then rest on your laurels. You have to be constantly on your toes. You have to be constantly aware of being overtaken by your own zest for perfection. This is very important.
I'm going to go back a little bit in time. You'd mentioned the Film Institute, but before you went to the Film Institute, you were a graduate in political science from a Gandhian institute in Madurai with an influence of Gandhi, and you then had hoped to in fact pursue a career in theatre, and you looked at the possibility of the National School of Drama and gave up in dismay because your Hindi was perhaps not very good.
Even today.
Would you say that you ended up at the Film Institute by default?
Yes, almost, because at that time I wanted to study drama formally, and I found that at that time the institute was offering a course. The institute had just started in 1961, and I happened to see this advertisement in a newspaper about the same year, and it said that they were offering a course in screenplay writing and film direction. I very foolishly, very meekly, I thought screenplay writing should be very similar to playwriting. So because I was already writing plays, performing them, acting in them, directing them, I thought this is the real opportunity for me, and then that's how I applied.
Of course, you got in with a merit scholarship, and you were perhaps the first major FTII graduate from Kerala to make the kind of impact that you did with your very first film. You were talking about innovation, and I remember your film Kodiyattam, which was a film without any music at all.
That's true.
And it was a film that worked entirely with layers of sound. Was that again a conscious choice at innovation?
No, I thought of music in the film, because music has this problem. It starts underlining and tracking certain things. Music can be used, of course, very well, but in a film like Kodiyattam, where the hero is like a flotsam, there is nothing there that you can underline. But then the film is working towards a point where he comes back to life, and he thinks that the family, the relations, all that really count. To that point of awareness, the whole thing is working, and the film has a very episodic structure. In fact, if you look at it, it has even the structure of a festival in a temple in a village. In a village festival, what happens is people go to watch the fun of the festival, and then actually their being together there is the festival, and outwardly you don't really see any development, but then there is an internal development. So this is the idea around which I worked it, and I could not see any place where I could really use composed music. So I have gone in for sound effects, even sounds of the birds, of the everyday sounds that you hear in life. But then again, the sounds, each type of sound used it denotes a time, an emotion. All these things have been brought in through the use of the sound effects.
The film, there was almost a conscious moving away from literary convention, in a sense. You weren't using sort of the traditional literary symbolic images, and your images were very sort of stark and precise. And in some ways, that has been the hallmark of much of your cinema. it has a deep, quiet, controlled simplicity to it, and yet there's a profound control in the images that emanate from it. What is the process of creation for you? You get a story, and then what do you do?
Well, it started. In fact, Kodiyatam started from a character actually, whom I knew in my childhood. But when it is finally written, because I always write very detailed script, when it was finally written, I found that it had very little to do with the character I started with, and it kept on developing. With the result, I could give these levels of textures and things like that weave all that into the film as I kept on working. But then also, I also wanted to give, because of that particular character, because of the very nature of the character, I wanted to give it this episodic structure, and also I wanted the viewers to feel that nobody has manipulated anything. It should look like everything has been happening like this, and you are just there. This is the kind of treatment I attempted in this.
It strikes me that obviously you put in a lot of work on your films because you take a long time between films. Your first film was in 1972, and you've done 6 or 7 films since then. So there's a long gestation period, and I think that shows in your work. There's an enormous sense of control and consideration in it, which gives it its profundity.
In fact, I even right now I'm thinking about an idea and then thinking of doing a film, writing a script, but I've been rejecting ideas like that because when it really strikes, then you feel very excited about it, and then I said, well, it is not time to take it up.
Do you feel insecure between these periods? What if an idea doesn't strike?
It is terrible actually, when you really want to make a film and then nothing really exciting starts you, because excitement means an idea should take you along through the whole process of making the film. It should be so exciting, enthralling, for you at every moment of its making. And then in that process, what happens is, if the idea itself is it has the potential, then like an organic development, it keeps on growing. This is a very special kind of feeling that you get.
I'm sure that sort of funding now with your eminence isn't such a difficult problem for your work, but the early years post the Film Institute were a struggle, and you were involved with Aravindan and a group of very eminent filmmakers with the setting up of Chitralekha. What was that experiment?
Actually, at that time in 1965, when I passed out, that was the time when nobody believed that there could be formal training in filmmaking. The only way of making a film was to apprentice under some established film directors, and then go on working under him, starting as a clubber boy and then slowly graduating to become an assistant, first assistant, second assistant, like that, and finally making a film when he gets the chance. So in the beginning, I did attempt through my friends to get some finance to make a film. But then slowly, and not slowly really, but then almost quickly, I realized that for the kind of training and background I had, I would never find a producer from the regular film industry. So we decided, myself and a few friends of mine. In fact, Aravindan was not involved in the project. Other friends like Bhaskaran Nair and a couple of other friends who studied with me in the institute. So we took we formed this cooperative, and then started right away. Although we formed the cooperative, we didn't have the money. The cooperative was it was a cooperative of poor people, so it was a poor cooperative. So we had to raise funds by making documentaries, and in fact that was a great period of learning for me, in the sense I learned not only directing films, I started doing camera work, editing films, recording sounds, and like that. So I did practically about everything about filmmaking in that period, and that disciplined, I think, my work, because even while you were scripting, you knew that how exactly to achieve that effect, you knew, because no cameraman would ever tell me that this is not possible, because I would know that it is possible, otherwise I wouldn't write. So this was a great advantage. And then of course cooperative did a lot of things other than making short films. The first 2 feature films were produced by the cooperative, and then we made about more than 24 short films, not necessarily very important films, but then they were commission jobs. To keep this cooperative going, we had to make that kind of films, and unfortunately cooperative is not functioning today.
So why do you think the wonderful movement like this declined? What happened?
No, it's an organic happening, because anything that has a birth, it has a period of growth, then a decline, and end. So I see it like that way. And also cooperative did a lot in creating an awareness amongst the Kerala audiences, because cooperative was behind the whole film society movement in Kerala, because we could help societies being formed in various towns in the state, and then supply them with the films, literature, go around talking about films. So it was almost a missionary activity. And then about around that time, the public sector studio also came into being. That was one of the reasons why the cooperative started declining.
You've been the chairperson of the Film and Television Institute in Pune, an institute of which you were a graduate. What is your agenda for the Film Institute?
I must say that this has been one institution which has retained its eminence right from the beginning to this date. And in this, although in the beginning the industry was very skeptical about the training being given there, today you can see that the whole film industry in the country is being has been permeated by the institute graduates, and you can also see the quality in the cinematography, in the sound recording, in all these spheres especially.
What
One area where we have not been really very successful is in the matter of students in the direction course. I think direction is basically a very personal thing. You bring your own experience, your own attitude to it. It's like being a writer. No institute can train you as a writer, whether you have it or you don't have it. That's all. So when people blame that how many directors it has been able to produce, I don't take it as very seriously, because no institute in the world can produce directors. It can help the directors find their way, find their own expression.
What new direction or content are you giving the institute?
The stress has been on the institute students being exposed to all kinds of influences, not necessarily in Western cinema or the European cinema, but then also our own masters like Ray, Katak, Manal Sen, Shyam Benegal, all these very important, Manikaul, Kumar Sahni, all these very important filmmakers, they need to study. And in fact, in the present program of study, we have also given a lot of importance to workshops conducted by eminent filmmakers, internationally known filmmakers. In fact, even the last year we had about 6 filmmakers from various countries like Czechoslovakia, Hungary. All these very outstanding filmmakers have been coming, staying there.
You just mentioned a list of a number of eminent Indian filmmakers. Who have been the filmmakers who have been a major influence in your work and life?
If you talk about Indian filmmaker, as the most important is of course Hrithik Katak, and first should come the name of Satyajit Ray and then Hrithik Katak. I think they have been. Hrithik Katak was also my teacher at the institute. But influence means you admire their work, but then you don't want to replicate what they have already done, because there is no way of paying tribute to a guru.
To what degree do you think that your work has been influencing that of other filmmakers generically?
I have no idea. Actually, I have no idea.
To what extent do you think that your work has had to respond to, has been influenced by the changing external environment in terms of audience and viewer responses and reactions? I think with the advent of a lot of people watching television, the amount of attention span that people tend to have for a quality of your film has these wonderful images are held and until they sort of evoke emotions in the audiences. It's not just a fragmented image that keeps sort of going by. So to what extent are you governed by, influenced by, respond to changing audience tastes, shall I put it?
Well, if you cannot completely ignore the audience response. At the same time, you cannot also go by the audience response. In fact, in the beginning, when I made my first film, second film, I used to go and watch the reaction of the audiences. And there are areas in the film, where you can visibly see and feel the audience responding, seeing and reacting. And when you see this, and then when you find that they really take it, and if you are around, then later on I realize this can be very bad on you.
In what
because
way?
Because then you will start trying to placate to their kind of tastes and then attitudes, which can be very dangerous. In fact, you have to make them see your work on your own terms, not on their terms. Not on their terms. So I'm well aware of the change in the attitude of the audiences, because especially because of the fast moving images of the certain channels and programs, and it can definitely condition the viewing character of the people. Yes, it can change, but then it is both ways. You cannot ignore it. At the same time, you cannot be entirely guided by that.
For you, what is the moment of creative satisfaction when you've made a film? At what stage does it happen? When you see the answer print, when you show it to your first audience, when you win the award as you do with sort of unending succession? What is the moment of supreme gratification? When does it happen?
It's not at just one point, at different points, in fact. It cannot be when I see my first print, I am always unhappy. Always unhappy. When I see my rushes, I am very, very depressed. And then, of course, there are various reasons, because it may not be graded, it may not be what you had imagined, in the sense the same view, everything under a different lighting will look very different on the screen. It can still be graded and developed, improved, that. But at the same time, even watching too many takes, it's a problem, because you are constantly worried about which take you are going to choose. Although, because by habit I go for more than one take always. Even when I am happy with a take, I go for a retake, because I think my art is that of the retake. Because I always want to rethink, reconsider a proposition. So even when the final print is struck, you are not entirely happy, because I sit with my technician even for the grading. So I am involved in everything I do in cinema. So nothing comes as surprise. But then what sometimes surprises you is somebody condemning your work entirely. Like somebody says, this man has been toiling for so many years and he doesn't even know how to make a film. Such comments come, it may be coming from very strange minds, very psychological working of the mind. But at the same time, it can really hurt you. And sometimes somebody says that it's a great work. That also doesn't really satisfy you, because you know that kind of comment doesn't really assess your work. Whereas when somebody watches your film and he talks to you in a way that shows that he has understood your work in its entirety, that really pleases you. That's the point, in fact. Then you also realize, after all, an artist wants to be understood, not necessarily praised or condemned. What's most important is that.
This is to wish you many more films, many more years of filmmaking, and many more accolades and laurels. And you already have won far more than we have been able to mention in this program. Thank you very much for the opportunity and privilege of talking to you.
Thank you.